Hello, it's Paul with All About Neurofeedback here again, and I'm really honored to speak with Dr. Mark DeBrincat. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay,
DeBrincat.
good. DeBrincat, yeah, did okay. You know, he has a really amazing story about his own personal journey with neurofeedback, and he's been doing some really amazing things with people and helping them with their challenges as well. So I wanted to get him on to talk a little bit about that and just really um, dive deep into his journey because he's got some really amazing things to say. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what brought you into neurofeedback, how long you've been doing it, that kind of thing, and just some of your background.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show today. It's always an honor to be able to associate with other neurofeedback people and be able to share some of the victories that we have and the things that help us catapult patients forward to find that amazing healing breakthrough that, so many people are looking for and hit a wall and eventually think to themselves that I'm never going to get better and I just have to deal with this and this is my life. And I'm here to tell you that that is so not true. We have such an amazing body that has the ability to transform and remodel and rebuild and restore things that have happened to us if you just give it the potential and you give it enough time. And of course, you have the right attitude about all of that. That plays a big role in it too. But I've been a chiropractor for 30 years now, and always been fascinated with brain health. I thought I was going to be a brain surgeon, but I realized brain surgeons don't have a relationship with their patients. And I'm more of a touchy-feely guy. So chiropractic seemed to be the avenue, and brain and spinal trauma was my focus. And so unfortunately, I had to become my own best patient after just a few years in practice. And my wife and I were in a head-on collision with an 18-wheeler. She broke her neck. I shattered my pelvis in half. I severed most of the muscles from my legs, lost a third of my intestines, and put a lot of damage into my spine in 11 areas. And so I was a hot mess for a long time. It took 17 years completely to get me out of pain and to get my life back. The last 4 years were probably the worst. The first four and the last four were probably the absolute worst. For after years of being, a stubborn chiropractor that I'm not going to take any meds or pain meds or things like that. I had to know where I was so I knew how I was getting better and when I felt a breakthrough. If I was just medicated, I'd be numb all the time and never know. So I was very diligent about not living my life like this and finding that breakthrough and spent a fortune, everything that I had, trying to find answers. And so much of it didn't work, but so much of it did. And these little breakthroughs give you inspiration to be able to do so much more. So after 4 years in a permanent chair and people having to pick me up and move me and dress me and just take care of so many little things that I wish they didn't have to be able to do that, I was able to um, dust off my neurofeedback equipment that had been sitting in the closet because every time I do a brain map, my brain was still on fire. There was no putting it out. And it was just discouraging. I didn't think it would ever help me again. So I went a few years without even trying. And then some guy at a continuing ed conference says, "Well, why aren't you doing that every day? You'd get out of that chair." And I looked at him like he was crazy. I'm like, what are you talking about?" And he's like, "You just got to do more." And I'm like, "But they said we can't do more." He's like, "Well, who are they?" It's like they got a protocol for maximum money in the doctor's pocket. It's not necessarily what's best for the patient. You need to get that thing out of your closet and do it every day. And so I started pushing the limits until I'd get a headache each time or just about that place. And figured out a bunch of different body hacks to go a little longer and to go a little longer. And pretty soon I was up to an hour to 2 hours a day. And then within 90 days, I was doing most of my personal care stuff for myself. So I was seeing amazing breakthroughs, be able to get out of my chair and into the car without people having to do that for me. That was an amazing breakthrough. So this set the stage of like, I'm getting out of this chair and I'm getting my abilities back. And it took a few
So
years and
I'm
I
sorry
did
to
several
interrupt.
things, but yeah.
I got to ask you, so you're saying that neurofeedback helped heal physical trauma where to the point that you're in a wheelchair and it actually helped you, like how does that
100%.
work?
So when we're doing neurofeedback, you're challenging your brain. And when you can get it to the perfect amount of challenge where it's not too hard, where I want to quit, but it's not too easy, where it's not challenging. Like when you're right in that sweet spot, you're actually doing new tissue growth. And it's going to happen in your central nervous system where you need it the most. So obviously, I had a lot of issues. I couldn't feel my arms and legs. My hands and feet were burning broken glass all the time. And it felt like I had knives from my head to my tail in my spine. So any breath or movement, somebody was back there messing with them. And so after, within this 90 days, I was able to move without the pain. I was starting to get my hands to calm down a little bit. I was able to, do more, get up and move with, before it was just too painful. I couldn't do it. And so,
That's
major
wild.
breakthroughs from a neurological point. And then, and combined with other products and other technologies, you can keep taking it up to the next level. You plateau a little bit, it's like, okay, let's do the next thing. And so, long story short, I've been able to figure out ways to do biohacks into my patients that allows them to do neurofeedback for 4 hours a day, every day of the month, 120 hours a month. And I've had so many people that couldn't do things all of a sudden can. Okay. And it's not like I think of it when I was disabled and I couldn't do the things with my legs, they would do occupational therapy. And somebody sit there and move my leg and move my leg. I'm like, you're wasting your time. And they're like, no, this eventually will tell your brain that your leg's moving. I'm like, I really don't think it works that way. But it's ironic how now we can start targeting the centers in the brain that are the most dysregulated, and your body wants to heal that first. And so it starts balancing things. And next thing you know, I wake up and I can move my leg. It's like, and it's not just me. I've seen this to hundreds of patients since then. And, it's like once it's been 10 years ago this month that I got out of my wheelchair and off all my meds and, got my quality of life back. And it is, something that I could never imagine in my wildest dreams that I would ever get there. It just seemed like too far, wouldn't happen. But then in the midst of all of it, when I was highly medicated and stuck in a chair, I realized something. Your body's always replacing cells. And so whatever I'm doing now is going to determine the quality of that next cell. I know these are damaged, but the next ones don't have to be. They tap into the DNA from when I was young, before all these scars. And so I just got to work with being the best version of me so that next version is even better. And that was a huge breakthrough in knowing that it's never too late. Okay. And so now, 10 years later, 1,000 people that I've been able to help with disabilities get abilities back, I expect it. It's just a matter of how long is it going to take? It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And certain things we know, obviously from brain maps, we can tell if the potential's gone. It's too late. I'm sorry. I wish we would have gotten to you sooner. But too many people are giving up when they're only at strike one. We're not even close to strike three yet. And so it's like you have so much more potential. You just have to work with that, right?
That's really amazing to hear. So I would like a so that's physical things you're talking about. You still help people with the traditional things and neurofeedback helps with their mental health conditions and things like that, right?
Oh,
Um,
sure. What I
but
found, not to interrupt you, is most of the
yeah,
people that have the physical troubles have all the anxiety and depression, the insomnia secondary because they don't have their life and they're in pain and all of that. So we address all of those things with obviously with neurofeedback and with getting people's brains to reconnect, and start to communicate better. It's amazing how the body will work.
it is, and it's also amazing what happens to people that causes these things. I'm thinking about a young 3-year-old falling down a set of cement stairs, not going unconscious, but
Mm.
definitely banged his head. Years later, dealing with mental health issues, and likely those things are connected, right? And you start to see, because I've been, I'm not a neurofeedback provider right now, but I work with a lot of neurofeedback providers and I've seen what happens.
Sure.
It's amazing, right? So when you look at the brain as being that, you know, main operating system for your entire body, then you start to understand that this could actually happen, right? Because it does
Mhm.
create new pathways. It creates different ways for your brain to operate your body, right? In addition
Sure.
to the mental health things that neurofeedback is known for. So that's really fascinating to hear. So one question I'd have for you on it though is like, you're not saying that everybody has to sit in the chair for 4 or 5 hours every time they do it, are you?
No, no, I would have them do an hour to 2 hours in the morning, and then wait at least 4 hours before they're going to try it again. And they'll do, or an hour or 2 hours later at night. I have a few patients that will just sit there and binge watch Netflix for 4 hours straight. And with the protocols we're using, it allows them to do that without creating too much inflammation in the brain or too much oxidation in the brain that gets out of control. So every brain cell only has one function, and that's send information until the charge on it is gone, right? So once you don't have a charge, it's just like your phone. Once the battery's dead, it looks pretty, but it's not going to do anything until I go home and charge it again. So
Right.
when we sleep, we're repolarizing our brain cells. And as we're going through the sleep cycles, the stages of sleep, you need to go through all those stages at least 4 or 5 times in a night to be able to have the electrical charge on your brain cells to last the entire next day and maybe then some. And so when we find ourselves with damage and potential problems with our brain, it's like if we're not looking at the brain first before we go address the body, there's like this big black hole that you're missing in your healthcare plan. And, being a chiropractor for 14 years before I got into this 15 years ago, um, I would adjust and then wait for the body to catch up. And there was so many times they just plateau so quick. And then once we started looking at the brain in conjunction with chiropractic and the things that we did, it's like, oh, no wonder this wasn't connecting to that. These pathways aren't talking to each other, or right to left brain isn't connected, or there's been a major trauma here that caused the coup counter coup in the brain, and that's why these areas, and that's why your personality, and that's why these things. So let's address that. And then once we fix that, we can work on the rest of the body. It's like we need to go upstream before the symptoms are appearing. So we're not just masking the symptom, but we're trying to get back to the root of where the healing really needs to take place. And so that can be
Okay.
super helpful. And so I've seen so many physical, so many emotional, mental, I mean, every different type of patient that is looking to find their way back to what just normal felt like. It's been so long when they have different elements and things that it's no greater gift in this world than to give somebody that back. Once I've got my full legs and my arms and everything, and I can go do. It's like they told me I'd never do again, and here I'm out living in Colorado and dirt biking and skiing and golfing and doing everything for 17 years. He said I would never do again, and it's like it's the spirit inside that just is never quitting, right? And if you really know what you want, keep fighting for it. And you might have to pivot a little bit and you'll find things. Like I remember my parents telling me that, just hang in there. Just hang in there. There's new things being invented all the time. And there's probably some products or some technologies that have already been invented and you just didn't know about yet. So you just got to keep your eyes open and we'll find it. But there's something out there that's going to help you and you just don't know. And why is that? Because we have this thing called insurance, and insurance only covers to mask the symptom at the end of the stream, right? They're not wanting to fix the health problem. There's no money in it for them. They have enough money to figure out how to do it. And when they did, they wouldn't want to make a little money and have you be healed. They'd rather have you on something for the rest of your life. So they're all making money. It's so we're stuck in this upside down paradigm that we are the only ones that are going to take care of ourselves. At the end of the day, you're the one that controls what goes into your mouth, what you're looking at, what you're choosing to be around for your mental health and so forth. And we're making these choices. Nobody's making them for us. Now, sometimes people have limitations and people are making their decisions for them, and I get that. But at the end of the day, we can always be better. You think of like what we were talking about earlier when somebody has a condition, whatever you label it, half the country has that. But when you talk about the people that are looking to be the best version of themselves and optimize their peak performance, it's like 2% of the country, really has the desire to do that. And I think those numbers might be a little bit off, but the point is, why doesn't everybody make their number one priority in their life is making me the best version of me? It's like we just take for granted that we're alive and that we're working, and the fuel that people put into their bodies and the lack of exercise and the lack of sleep. You don't just make up for lost sleep on the weekend. You're damaging your brain every night. It's like you have to protect your neurology, and then your neurology will take care of you.
And you think about what's been going on in the world since COVID started, it's definitely ramped up. The election cycle, all these things that are going on.
Oh
People,
yeah.
and I find myself, I got to be very careful what I watch because it's so polarizing and you start getting so angry and so discouraged, right? And I think
Yeah,
that's the real pandemic, right? And
sure.
I just know how much neurofeedback impacted myself and my family and what I see with my clients. And I think almost everybody should do it, to be honest, right? And because
Yeah.
here's the other thing that I see, because I have a number of friends that are therapists that also do neurofeedback. Their therapy practices are booming, and they're getting multiple calls a day just out of the blue for people looking for therapy. The problem is that if you don't have something like neurofeedback to use in conjunction with it, it's a long road, right? It really
Absolutely.
is.
Yeah.
Like, so you combine it with neurofeedback, you might be looking at a month or two to get past whatever that issue is. Unless it was something like you were dealing with. I mean, that's
Sure.
extreme, right? But for traditional things with anxiety and stress and insomnia and those types of things, right? That's where,
Right.
neurofeedback can shine too. So, that's my opinion on it. And I think that, seeing the potential though, this is really fascinating to me because I haven't talked with somebody before that was able to heal the physical trauma that they had to the extent that you have had it, right? It's
Oh
amazing.
gosh. Yeah.
I know you have some, supplements that you use. Is supplements the right word?
Yeah, it's a supplement. Sure.
Okay. That helps the brain be able to handle these longer neurofeedback sessions that you recommend. Do you want to speak to that a little bit and just kind of let people know what that's
Sure.
all about?
So, initially when somebody starts training, they are told that, we're going to go, but if you start to feel pressure in your head, it's probably time to stop. Everybody has a little different limit of how far they can go before that happens. And if you start to get a headache, don't push through the headache because it won't go away. It'll just keep getting worse and worse. And so if I can just be a little scientific for a second and explain the mechanism of action of what's really going on there. We have to get back to a cell. We got to go down to cellular health in a single cell. You got about 100 trillion of them in your body. Each one of them has what's called a mitochondria. That's the powerhouse of the cell. That's what gives us bioelectrical beings, right? So you need the power in your house for your smart house to work, for the circuit breakers to turn on and off, for the air control, for your doors to unlock, for your lights to come on and off. These are all switches, okay? So every cell has mitochondria that makes the energy. That's the powerhouse of the cell. And redox signaling molecules come out of there as well. And those are the ones that are the workers in the cell that turn on and off switches. They're the language of communication at the cellular level. And so think of redox signaling molecules as the letters that make up the language. So we're talking hydrogen, oxygen, chlorine, sodium. These have just three or one electrons spinning around them, positive or negative. And so your body takes that and it builds antioxidants. So the whole point of my little science talk here is the fact that mitochondria determine how much oxidative stress is going to be in the cell. The more engines you have in there, the more oxidative stress. So your gut cells have about three per cell because they turn over quickly. Your muscle cells have about 300 to maybe 1,000 if you're an elite athlete, but your brain cells have 2.5 million per cell. So that's why only 3% of your body weight gets 20% of your blood because it needs to put out the fire. You have so much oxidative stress going on at rest. So when you start doing neurofeedback, it's like you're in the gym lifting weights with your brain. Okay, so now you're creating those engines to RPM up, like you're flatlining your car. You're going as fast as you can. You can only go so far before that car overheats. So when you start brain training, you turn on those 2.5 million engines per cell, and they're going and going and going and creating more energy. So as that happens, exhaust out of the car, if you had your car in the garage with the door shut, that's not healthy. All that carbon monoxide it could kill you, right? And so we have creating what's called oxidative stress just in making our energy. So now you're in there working out, the number of oxidative stress in your brain cells is increasing. So your body produces redox signaling molecules to neutralize that. It makes glutathione, and it's reducing the oxidative stress. Now, if it can't keep up with it, oh, you're going to shift over into inflammation because now we need to just flood the area and heal it because there's too much pollution in there. And so when it gets to the inflammation phase, because you can't keep up with the stress you're creating, now you get the pressure, and then you're going to get a headache. And so we have been doing all sorts of things to try to biohack the body to get it to be able to last longer before that happens. So 10 years ago, I was doing ketones. So we got everybody into ketosis and no sugar. And when we're doing ketones, they could actually go about an hour instead of a half hour. So that was a huge breakthrough. Then we found the only company that makes redox signaling molecules that are actually in a stable form outside the body, which that might not mean anything to you, but to me, that's impossible. How can you have a positive and a negative electron in the same medium and have them not neutralize each other? That's like saying you can put hot water and cold water in a glass and they stay separate. But this company did figure it out. And we have patients consume redox signaling molecules right before they start training, and they can literally go for 2 hours and never feel pressure, never get a headache. It's putting the workers directly into your brain that are neutralizing that oxidative stress as fast as it happens. So as we're aging, we have less mitochondria. That's just a fact. Every decade we lose 10%. So I don't make my cells fully charged like I did when I was 10, but now I can because of a supplement that allows us to actually build the potential back. So it immediately charges your cells, and then it's like cell communication. So think of the two things, the main functions that I want my phone to do: power up and get online. So that's what redox molecules do to every cell in your body. So when we megadose these molecules, we can train 100 hours a month, where the average person is doing about 30 minutes twice a week. And I don't care if you do 100 hours in a month or if you do it over 2 years, at the end, you get the same result. In fact, doing it quicker, you get faster results and probably more results because it's more targeted into that neuroplasticity. So I've been doing this for 8 years at this level now. I've been loving this product. It keeps my body at bay where I don't have symptoms neurologically in my hands and feet anymore. It's what's allowed me to live this lifestyle that they said I couldn't do. Yes, I remodeled tissue and I got better, but I still have limitations. I got lots of fusions. I got a computer in my spine that when I used to turn it on, I wouldn't feel anything from my chest down. I haven't had to use that in almost 10 years now. But it takes work. I still do neurofeedback. I still do all my therapies. I have my daily routine. And if I can take care of me first, then I can go serve the rest of the world all day long and help them find their breakthroughs, whatever it is. And the physical
Okay.
ones are super exciting. I've had kids that never spoke start talking. I've had people that have had vascular incidences where they've lost one side of their body, motor movement, and regain it all. I've seen hundreds of cases where physical things couldn't do, and then all of a sudden their body turned back on and started doing it again. So,
It's amazing.
every case is a little different, but don't give up. Just figure out ways to do more and to continue to watch your nervous system evolve. It's awesome.
So when you think about traditional, what most people do neurofeedback for their clients, they're looking at, like you said, that half hour or, twice a week or 3 times a week kind of thing. And
Yeah.
a lot of times, it's hard to have an exact number, but 20 sessions or 30 sessions or 40 sessions is usually enough to resolve a mental health issue, right? If
I
is
wouldn't
that
say
what you
so
say?
much resolve it. or
Okay.
is be able to control it better, to know what you need to do to be able to maintain symptom free, but it takes it it's a little bit different for everybody. And
Okay.
so I
Can
just
you
don't want to say, hey,
explain? Yeah,
so
we don't
we
want to
do a
sit.
brain map first. So we start with a QEEG brain map. And that
Yeah.
brain map is reconstructing an image of your brain's neurology, and it tells me your strengths and your weaknesses, and the areas that have high potential, and the areas that are, let's call it oxidative stress. Too much oxidative stress deteriorates the potential, takes the charge out of your cell, and now it just can't talk as well or function as well. And then inflammation is the other side of the spectrum. Okay, so when we're looking at brain mass, people see colors. Gray or green is usually normal. The reds and the yellows are overexcited. So this is inflammation. And then the blues are deterioration. Okay, so that's oxidation, and that's where the impulses are slowing down. So we're constantly battling both sides of the equation. Now, um, our goal is to help people find balance and homeostasis. So homeostasis is when we're neutral and we're able to thrive um, in all functions in our body. Now we eat, it throws us off homeostasis. We exercise, it throws us off. We have to heal, we have to get back. So we're constantly challenging our system to go off and back, off and back. Resilience is what matters. What you can do to get back as quick as possible is what determines how healthy you are, because you only have so much ATP. That's the energy that's charging your cells. You're going to go through your body weight every day in ATP, whether you like it or not, just to keep you alive. That's how much energy you have to create, like you're creating motor oil for your car, right? You're going to burn your body weight every day in that ATP, but you only have 50 grams in your body. What that means is you have to recharge it about 1,500 times a day just to keep you going. So you got these little tops, you got to keep pulling string on them and get them going again to keep the cells charging. Well, the string in this is the redox signaling molecules. And so that's what brings us back to resilience. And so when you find things like PEMF technology, it can charge those cells all day for you. Now you got all this extra redox that you can go heal your parts of your body that you don't ever have time to heal. We talk about this narrow margin of life, right? It's like your heart has to beat 60 to 100 times a minute. Outside of that range, you don't do good for very long. Your lungs breathe about 12 to 17 times a minute. You got about a 3-degree body temperature to work with, but your blood, you only got 1/10 of 1 degree of a pH scale to carry oxygen. So that's like so crazy. That's so narrow. And so that's 7.35 to 7.45. So if you're acidic, you've just lost your charge on your cell. You got no potential left. If you're alkaline, you lost the potential on your cell. There's no potential left. Think of like the
I have never
battery.
heard, I know about alkalinity and how important that is, right?
Yeah,
But I've never heard it explained that way. Thank you. That was awesome.
alkalinity stands for voltage potential,
Okay.
aka voltage potential. So a normal healthy cell has about 70 to 100 millivolts of a charge on it. If you have any condition, I have stress, I have anxiety, I have chronic fatigue, I have insomnia, I don't care what you call it, you've lost 30 to 50% of that charge just because your body's fighting something that you can't get back. If you have something like cancer, God forbid, you're down to about 15 to 20% of your charge left. That's why you have no fight. You can't fight back. These will attack the cell, and the walls aren't working. You don't have your force field. There's no power. And so you just can't fight back. And so we need the signaling molecules that are every one of our 100 trillion cells make to charge it back up and to give us potential again. Okay. And
Okay.
so, that's what neurofeedback is helping, giving us resilience. So I have lots of potential and I can recharge them easy and hold them. Think of a battery has a, a cell in between it where you got positive electrons on one side and negative ones on the other. Okay. Like a battery. If I were to take a light bulb and take one end of that battery and stick it to it, just one pole, and only touch the positive electrons, nothing happens. The negative electrons, nothing happens. There's no potential. But when they both touch it, woo, the light lights up. So that pH scale, you're looking at positive electrons, negative electrons. It doesn't matter which ones, you're away from neutral and there's no potential left. You got an accumulation of one and not the other. You didn't neutralize it. It became overwhelming. So now you kick in inflammation mode, and we got to get in there and heal everything. Okay. And so when we brain train, we create a lot more of this oxidative stress. That's why they just say, you know what, as a rule, let's just call it 30 minutes twice a week, because we don't want to, monitor that closely to people of you pushing it and how, it just seems like a lot of work. If we just stay under this minimum threshold, people won't complain about overtraining. So that became a protocol. But the brain wants to do it so much faster. You give it a little bit of sunshine and it's been gloomy all the time. You're like, please give me more sunshine. It's like, I don't like these clouds. And so it wants to go back every single day. And as we started doing that, it's like, oh my goodness, everything just blossoms so quickly, and potential comes back. It all goes back to potential. I got a little demonstration here in telling us how we're bioelectrical beings. There's a battery and a light in here. If I touch both of these poles, it's going through my body and back. So I would have an audience and I'd touch one side and I'd grab somebody's hand and everybody would hold hands, and the last person comes and touches the other side and it lights up, because we're all one battery as long as we're touching. Any one of the people could disconnect and it stops. Now you hear it going like this, that's 70 to 100 millivolts. If I was sick, it'd be going whoa, whoa, whoa. If I had no potential left, you put this in somebody's hands that has cancer and they're dying, there's going to be no oomph in that sound or in the light flashing. Okay, so it's a direct current. And how much of that potential do we have? So we want to increase that potential in the brain. So you got the power to go all day. You got the power to have your body respond as quick as you're asking it to do something. It's there, right?
Wow. Okay. So I've got a couple questions for you. So you think about, we talked about that 20, 30, 40 sessions and the traditional way of doing it. If you take your methods with that same person or that same patient, how many sessions would that be? Would that like a week, 2 weeks? I mean, we're talking about,
So
what would be the equivalent?
I have patients, we do a read every 20 hours. So some patients are doing that in 5 days. Some people take 2 weeks to do it. Okay. And so I'll rent out equipment all over the world where I send the whole system, everything. And so they're training, they're doing maps on it remotely through our, telemedicine. And they'll either do a 2-week plan or a month plan, or some people that have serious issues might have to do it for 3 or 4 or 6 months, So, but at this aggressive rate, I would agree with what you said earlier. I can help most people within 1 month, but that's not typical care. I mean, this is people that are probably going to do 50, 60 hours in that month.
Right.
Some people are high achievers, they go for the 120, but we get 50 or 60 in 20 hours. We remap, and then we can look at how much change in the overall neurology of your brain. And we're going to see 2 factors, like how much of it was the brain just reorganizing things and making it more efficient, and how much of that change is actually new tissue growth, like neuroplasticity and direct connections. And so we can show exactly where either of those things happen, but we can also see at that first 20 hours, they did like 80% reorganization and 20% new tissue growth. Now, when they do the next 40 or 20 hours and I map them again, then the reorganization's done. Now it's all tissue growth. And then I keep going and it's just go, go, go. So the faster they can do sessions back to back, we get out of that reorganizing phase. Like, you got to make it more efficient before we really lay down all the new pathways. We got to make sure you're not going all the way around the brain when there was a pathway right here to here that was damaged. You choose to go this way to get there. Well, we're going to show you that it's fixed now. And then you need to start going this way. It's going to save you a lot of time. We're like, oh, okay, I could go this way. And then once you're doing it, then we'll go, okay, now let's reinforce those, make it 4 lanes, make it 6 lanes, make it an 8-lane highway. So you can just easily send so much data through that pathway that you don't have to think about it. Think of like when you first started learning to play the guitar. Initially, these fingers hurt. This one has to strum. I don't have rhythm, and my eyes have to tell both hands what to do from reading music. At first, you can't even tell what I'm trying to play. It hurts your ears. After a while, basic song, okay, I got it. After 10,000 hours, I can sit here and have this conversation with you while I'm playing a song in the background and not have to think about the song at all because I'm a professional at it. 10,000 hours of trying to do anything will put so much fiber around that original nerve that now it's like throwing a ping pong ball down a hallway. I'll get it down the hallway every time versus having to hit the bullseye with a dart. That takes a lot more skill and it's much tighter, right? And so the more you do something, the easier it is to make that happen. So reinforcing or reorganizing is the brain's first goal always, and then it just goes into heavy, tissue. So here's something that people come in and their brains all different colors and it's a hot mess we call it, and they have high hopes to get abilities back, physical abilities that I'm talking about, and we get their brain all green. Everything's pretty much within normal range, but yet they're still not better yet. They didn't have their breakthrough. And they feel like, am I supposed to be discouraged? Like, wasn't I supposed to see something by now? And no, not necessarily. I find most breakthroughs after they've completed getting everything where it should be, and they keep going. Now it's just one after another. Here they come. You're waking up every morning and you can do new things because you keep putting the time in when everything's already efficient. For those martial arts that are artists that are on the show or listening to this, it's equivalent to getting your black belt. A lot of people get their black belt like, "Yay, I made it," and then they don't train anymore. They think they're tough guy or something. Where black belt's like, okay, you got the basics. Now let me teach you martial arts. This is like the beginning of where you really start to learn how it all works and put the dots together. And so this is the same thing. Your goal isn't necessarily just to get everything green. That's the first goal. Your goal is to improve function. Remember, anytime you see a symptom, like I feel something, okay, 10% of your nervous system is for sensation, 90% is for function. So I'm happy the symptoms go away, but we have a lot of work to do to keep laying fibers in the function area. And so your
Okay.
body wants to make that happen. And most people only do, 10 hours over 3 months, and then they ran out of money and time. It was so time consuming that it wasn't as rewarding as they were hoping it was going to be. When we found that we speeded into just 2 weeks, like even in my Colorado clinic, we'd have multiple rooms going and people would pay for 20 hours and they'd come in and get 2 hour windows, the same time, 5 days a week, and they're done in 2 weeks and have a breakthrough within that time. Now, if they did another one, that's usually where the better breakthroughs come through. So it takes about 40 hours, I would say, to handle the little things like ADD, anxiety, depression,
Okay. Okay.
insomnia, things like that kind of stuff. They really see a major change within that time. But the
Well, you take
physical abilities,
ADHD, right? I mean, you're
sure,
talking Ritalin and Dexedrine and those kind of drugs to control it, which it doesn't really control anyways. And then they got talk
right,
therapy, which doesn't really seem to make a difference either, versus 20 to 40 hours doing this and it's done.
right,
And
yeah.
generally it's is permanently done, right?
Well,
Unless there's new
unless there's a
trauma.
new trauma, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's supposed to last for 30, 40 years or something,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
as
What
far as
about
all that goes.
addictions? So I want to do a couple
Yeah,
extremes. I want to talk about the business owner, the entrepreneur that's driven and focused, and then they just keep getting beat up and they get stressed, and some of that motivation goes away. So that's one extreme. The other extreme is that person that has fell into addiction and alcoholism, and they just can't seem to get out of it. Can you kind of just contrast those two and just what your experience has been with those type of things?
so let me first kind of preface that yes, those things, just like people that have had physical injuries now also lead to the anxiety and the depression as a secondary thing. So often the substance abuse comes from losing hope and thinking that you're not going to be better and I can't do this anymore and what's the point even, and so they just kind of numb themselves. And so when we have a software with our brain mapping, that allows us to look at all the Brodmann areas, and then it pulls up about 200 different networks in the brain. And one of them is the addiction network. And so we can see right when they start, how easy is this going to be to help this person with the addiction, or how challenging is it going to be? But it also gives us the metric of what we need to look at in that brain map each time. And now, on a side note, I've been hired by several different companies to do clinical studies on a product to see what it does to the brain. And with that, I've done close to 30,000 brain maps in my career, just trying to validate what's this going to do to my patient's brain? Is this something that I should put into the program or not? And so I was hired by a company that had a PEMF device at one point, and they were thinking this is all about circulation. But when I did the study on it, I found that they had 20 athletes that were elite athletes, and all of them had the most amazing network. It wasn't about circulation. The most amazing network that changed because of that device was the addiction network. And the company had no idea that it even would help with addictions, maybe. Like they didn't know. But because of brain mapping and being able to take a whole group of people and say, what's the one network that changed the most on everybody? It's like, whoa, now we kind of know what this is. And so I've done a lot of different CBD products. And the first 30 I did when I moved out to Colorado, I was very discouraged. They were making the brain suppress the brain so much. I wouldn't even take it myself. I'd get subjects to come do the study because I just didn't have faith that I was going to find any good ones. And I was working out of a hospital in Denver at the time. And one of my patients went from wheelchair to walking in the next day. And I'm like, okay, what did you do? It's like, come on. And she's like, you're not going to believe it, Dr. Mark, but it was a CBD. I'm like, you're right. I don't believe it. What is it? We tested her on it, and her brain improved like 63% in 15 minutes after doing a tincture under her tongue. And it gave her neurological abilities, able to move fluidly, where she was always just, really hard to work on a walker. Otherwise, she stayed in a chair. And so I was like, oh my gosh, we found something that really is beneficial to the brain. And within about 6 months or so, I found about six other ones that were all equally as good. So I commissioned a study to where we had, I guess, 10 people come in for each product on a different day after intermittent fasting and find out which one's the best. And it turned out they were all between like a 30 and a 60% change, which is phenomenal. But there wasn't one that stood out. Everybody kind of responded better to a different one in the morning and a different one at night. There might be a couple of double pairs, but it was let's just say interesting to say the least. But
Okay.
having all of these networks, we can really identify things like that addiction network. And then we could
So
see
just, were
which
you
areas
saying
of the
earlier
brain
that
were
the
causing that.
PEMF, were you saying earlier that the PEMF was really effective at addictions? Is that what you were getting at?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And
And so it
then,
was a specific one, and it only had one
okay,
program to run on it. And so it was a very unique situation.
okay.
And I've
So in
studied lots of
general,
PEMFs. I'm very in tune with what that's doing as well.
though, neurofeedback is, somebody's going to go to see a practitioner, is probably better to do neurofeedback than PEMF unless that person that's doing the PEMF has the same one that you're talking about, which is unlikely, right?
Yeah, if it was just for addictions, but then keep in mind the PEMF doesn't heal anything. It just gets you into this place for about 12 hours that you're in a good zone for 12 hours, but then it wears off. So you literally have to do that every day to maintain the results. Neurofeedback, like we said, we can get further upstream and get to the root of it and find out where the nerve isn't communicating in the first place. And then your body can help heal and restore that. We don't heal anybody. Your body's the only thing that heals you,
Yeah,
right? And
but
so
it is
it goes
effective
back
for
to the
addictions, right?
potential. Oh,
I heard
absolutely.
one person told me that
Absolutely.
the way it worked for them was it doesn't like fix it, but allows them to actually pause and think and
Yes.
make a
Yeah.
decision, a choice, instead of just going to the same thing all the
Impulsive.
time, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And you think,
Yeah.
like, I look at the homelessness and the drug addictions and all the things that are going on right now. Why is neurofeedback not the first thing for that, or PTSD, right? Like, why
I
is it
know.
not? you know?
Oh my gosh, I can't tell you how many people with PTSD come out of a session and they're like, I feel like I just graduated high school and the world's my
Yeah,
oyster. Like, what was I thinking? I feel fantastic. It's like, I'm
yeah,
back.
no,
Yay, I'm back.
yeah,
Thank you, Dr.
yeah.
Mark.
No,
It's
that's
awesome. So,
awesome. Yeah.
I,
So now I take the other side of
as
it.
far as
Sorry, you go.
let me just say one thing about the
Yeah.
PEMF. It's only going to charge your brain cells. And so they might start communicating better why they're charged. It's not helping them grow new tissue. Like that's what the neurofeedback's doing. It's laying down more tissue so that the communication's better. Not just charge. There's two components to a healthy cell: charge it and be able to talk on it. So both things. So the PEMF isn't going to be so much of the talking on it as it is charging everything so that it's got power. Neurofeedback is all about communication. It's all about opening up those channels and helping people meaning the workers in my brain and in my body communicate better to know what needs to be replaced and healed and the state of it. If you're coming by a cell and one of them is lit up, let me see if I have a picture for you. Picture paints 1,000 words sometimes. If one cell has potential and energy and the other one doesn't, um, one cell looks like there's a party going on inside and there's a lot of things happening, and the other one looks like nobody's home. But in the one that nobody's home, if they're in there saying, I need help, but nobody hears them, nothing's going to happen. There's no potential,
Right.
and the cell's gonna lose.
So that's kind of one extreme. The other extreme is that business owner that wants to get that drive and that focus and be able to deal with their stress. Um, how effective is neurofeedback for that type of thing?
I think it's tremendous. I have, like I said, a lot of patients are coming in with disabilities. And then I have about maybe 10% of the clients over the years are CEOs of companies. They're people that are managing $1 million decisions every day, and they have so much anxiety, and they're afraid of making wrong decisions. They're feeling, very emotional about a lot of these decisions. And so they come to me, and I've had two pathways here. A crossroad is basically where they're at. I can fix your brain, but you might not like your job once it's fixed. Or I'm going to fix your brain, and then you're going to be able to handle everything. And you're going to love it so much, because the job might be the thing that is always dysregulating them. And so we have to figure out, is it that you don't like your job, or is it that the stresses have dysregulated, you can't pull it back together? So in some scenarios they go back all green, major changes. I get letters months later like, we just went through a merger, it was the most stressful time in 10 years. I sat there with a smile on my face through all the board meetings while everybody was losing it. Thank you, Dr. Mark. This was so worth every penny. I've made clear, conscious decisions. I mean, it was such a beautifully well-written letter. And then I've had the other extreme, like, you were right. My job is terrible. These people will never get it right. I can't work with people like this. I was, what was the word he used? Not selling my soul, but something like that. Like I was, my moral compass was off because of stress and this. I was cloudy, and I was walking with people that I shouldn't have been walking. Thank you for bringing me back in whole again, so I can live my life the way I need to be, where I'm happy. And so, it can go both ways, but when people are not performing it the way that they need to perform, and they know that they used to, don't just think you're getting older. Don't just make up excuses. And certainly a medication to deal with emotional issues is a time and a place for it. And usually it's a short window because it's been devastating and you need to get through it. But they're not going to come tell you, okay, the window's over, we should take you off of it now. And people go through a season, and then next thing you know, it's 16 years later, and they're still on this medication for something that they don't even have anymore. And so, a time and a place, but really we focus back on what's the get my brain to connect, whatever it's missing that keeps causing me to connect. Let me get it to understand better, or let's see if how we can bring healing into that brain. So here we're talking about, the voltage or the potential of our cells. And when you have a full charge, you can see the one on the right looks like, there's activity going on. It's communicating. The cell walls are working. It's letting oxygen and nutrients in. It's pushing the toxic waste and stuff out. The one on the left it's lost its potential. Okay, there's just not a lot left. So when you're
Are these
sick, the
just
sicker you
models or is
are,
this actual pictures?
these are actual. I think that's an actual cell, but I'm not
Okay.
sure
Probably not the
the
lights and
premise of where
stuff,
it came
but the
from.
rest of it. Okay. All right.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just as how this is how potential works in our cells. Okay.
Okay.
So I love the visual side of it. And as we're aging, it's never going to be as bright as the 10-year-old. That's why they're resilient. I mean, think about it. When we were 10, we could go to the hill in the backyard, lay down with our hands over our head and roll all the way down laughing and get up and be dizzy and walk in circles for a second, but then we run up and do it again. If I tried to do that now, I would be hurting for days. It's like I can't roll down a hill because we don't have the resilience in our tissue to heal that as quick as possible. We have like half the charge left. If you're over 50 years old, you're only half charged unless you're doing something to help improve that potential.
Okay.
That's what it boils down to.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah.
Well, I just wanted to, we only got a few minutes left here, and I just wanted to say as well that it's interesting. There's such a small world, and there's no word of a lie. Yesterday, I'm talking to one of my friends that does neurofeedback, and I mentioned this interview coming up with you, and she said, she said, he saved my husband's life before I got into this. Like, that's what got her into this. She said she credited you to getting her into neurofeedback. And it was because what you did saved her husband's life, who was a veteran and had PTSD, I believe is what the issue was, in a pretty serious way.
Mm.
And, you think about that, all of the things that you're talking about, that's what it boils down to, is how you're impacting people, right? And to me, that was so cool to hear, especially just the day before we're doing our interview, right? I couldn't believe it. It's
Right.
such
What
a
a small world.
Um,
Let me just piggyback on that. It's saying once, I've always loved giving back and, I'd give you the shirt off my back and I just want everybody to be healthy. And I've kind of always had that. But once I've been through what I've been through and I got the other side of it and got my abilities back, and now I know a new truth that other people don't, there is no greater gift in the world than to hear something like that and to know that the things that we say, think, and do are actually changing the lives of millions of people tomorrow. And that is that's the greatest purpose in life.
yeah.
It's to be able to serve others and be able to pay it forward. And I couldn't keep my mouth shut about this stuff. I mean, the victory that I've
Yeah, I'm
found
glad to give you
in
a
my life
platform for it
back,
too, right?
I hate to see people unnecessarily stuck, right? Because there's so many people like us out there that really want to connect. And that's why I loved meeting you. When I found your website, kind of stumbled across it, it was like, oh my gosh, where has this company been? It's like, this is so awesome. We need platforms that other patients can go to and find people near them. It's like
Yeah,
our neurofeedback, unless you're just with the one company of that type of neurofeedback machine, they have their own little cultures, but we got to step back and we're all doing the same thing. We all have to be able to join arms and work together and create this symbiotic relationships with each other, because there are so many people right around each one of your homes and offices that are living in misery today and don't know that this stuff exists. And it just keeps getting better, guys. I remember when we were just doing a single site and just, CZ. And just with that, I've seen a quadriplegic start to get her abilities back and walk. I've seen autistic kids that never spoke for 12 years just start talking up a storm. I mean, I've seen the miracles from one spot. Now that we can do it all and triangulate it and know 10 times more data, we're just able to be that much more efficient, that quicker. And it's only going to keep getting better. And so, get in now why we can and start making that difference in your lives. This is going to be something that will impact your life and all the people that know you for the rest of your life. So find
excellent.
somebody quick.
You are in
Yeah.
Florida now, right? Because you mentioned
Yeah, I'm
Colorado. I
down
just
in
want people to
Naples.
understand you're now in Florida, in Naples. And you have a number of your own clinics, I believe. Is that correct?
I do. The Good News Doctor is my brand, so thegoodnewsdoctor.com, and we have other doctors that are in my network that we joined over the years that are all
Okay,
working together, changing the world. We have
awesome.
neurofeedback clinics out in Ireland and the UK, and then here through the US as well too.
Okay, that's awesome. And you also mentioned some supplements that, obviously are a big part of what you're doing. And are you currently taking patients as well?
I
Okay,
am, sure.
so um, we're going to have on your profile, we'll have the links underneath to connect with you. Do you have like a
Okay.
consultation you'll do initially just to see if they're a good fit or not?
Absolutely. Yeah, we
Okay,
offer a free consultation at first just to see. Exactly.
okay, awesome. All right, so that'll all be linked in the profile, which is linked under the video here. And I really appreciate your time today. That was a fascinating journey about neurofeedback with some things that I didn't know, and I've been pretty focused on this for quite a long time. So thanks again. I
Awesome.
appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you, Paul. And thank you everybody for watching.